You are being monitored by the Arcturians, and before you knew it, something in the wider field had already taken notice. It arrived like a resonance in the room before you walked in, a recognition sounding as a pulse, a template that registered your frequency first before your mind caught up. You do not need to have proof for this to be true for you. Your interior will already hold evidence in the form of felt shifts and small, persistent confirmations. Listen, this is what they saw. There is a kind of noticing that is not curiosity, not judgment, but a technical reading of coherence. Imagine a network of light and purpose scanning a sea of options, not to rank you, but to map where stability exists. That mapping is the moment of inclusion. It is not a prize, it is not a coronation, it is a recognition. The field reads a pattern in you that can be matched, aligned, and supported in order to stabilize a larger timeline. Inclusion means your field met a threshold. You passed a resonance test you may not have known you were taking. You may be surprised by hearing this framed this way, because the experience of being noticed often arrives quietly, through rearrangements rather than proclamations. You may have felt a subtle pressure, like a gentle pulse asking, "Are you ready?" Or you may have simply noticed that certain things began to move around you. People who once fit your life drifted away. Invitations arrived from places you had not planned. Dreams began to quicken. Those are not accidents. They are indications that something beyond your immediate perception has registered a coherence in you and is beginning to organize possibilities around it. If this is touching something within you, add your frequency to the field. Tap like or signal in whatever way feels aligned. It strengthens the signal for those who are listening. The threshold they watched for is not about having achieved perfection. It is about a degree of inner alignment, a steadying of emotional rhythms, a shortening of reactivity, a clarity about small choices that previously felt chaotic. The Arcturian reading tends to follow patterns of coherence, how quickly your nervous system settles after disturbance, whether your attention moves from fragmentation to integration, whether your choices begin to echo across days rather than evaporate by morning. You may recognize this in the moments you handled a crisis with less inner turbulence, or the times when silence felt like the correct answer and you did not have to force a response. Why were you singled out? Because in their view, you are an operational node. That is awkward language if you are hearing it for the first time, but what it means is simple. Your pattern of being functions well in service of stabilizing larger fields. The Council, an intelligence that operates as a collective observer, does not include you because you are special in a way that elevates you socially or spiritually.
They include you because your coherence helps hold a possibility into place. Recognition, not reward. You may already have felt 3 basic signs of this recognition in your life: an uptick in synchronicities, a rush of vivid or accelerated dreams, and a shifting of your social orbit. Synchronicities will feel like the world offering you the same clue in 3 different keys: a song on the radio that repeats a phrase you needed to hear, a repeated number, a coincidence that threads a thought through to action. These events are not necessarily miraculous in a theatrical sense. They are more like fresh brushstrokes on a map, aligning to your inner trajectory. Dreams that accelerate will carry you forward. What once felt like fragmented nighttime images may begin to carry a momentum, as if your dream life is rehearsing steps the waking world will soon mirror. These dreams may feel denser, clearer, or more directional than before. They do not promise outcomes. They suggest orientation. Social orbit shifting is the practical rearrangement. People who once fit your life become less resonant, while new alignments arrive with a strange ease. Doors may close softly. Openings may appear in ways that make sense only when you later look back. This again is not a judgment about value, but a reordering around a different frequency. These trends are not guarantees. They are tendencies you might observe. They are not the work of any tyrant observer, but rather a network responding to what's present in you. Now imagine how they saw your future. Not one fixed scenario, but a convergence of possible selves leaning toward coherence. The Council reads a lattice of potential timelines. In that lattice, several of your probable futures begin to converge when your frequency meets theirs. Those nodes pull together like iron filings toward a magnet. In practical terms, that convergence looks like repeated invitations to the same theme, choices that keep circling back, people who reappear in slightly different costumes, opportunities that ask for what you've been refining. The future, in their reading, is not merely ahead of you, it is an attractor that already tugs at this moment. Because of that tug, you may experience what feels like destabilization. This is important. Destabilization is not punishment. When a field realigns, old structures must loosen to make room for new organization. You could feel this as disorientation, a fog, or even a peculiar loneliness. These are not signs of failure. They are the field creating space for a new pattern. Think of it as a clearing, necessary for a seed to receive sunlight. The clearing can feel like loss because it removes familiar scaffolding, but it also releases energy that is then available to form a different structure. The Council's decision about you is functional. You are asked to return into a role of coherence. They are not appointing you to a throne. They are shifting you back into function.
That function looks like a stabilizing presence in relationships, a quiet resonance that others unconsciously match to, an ability to hold complexity without fragmenting. It sounds small, and it is enormous. Small because it often shows up as steadiness in ordinary moments. Enormous because steadiness becomes a template other fields can copy. This shift begins inside before it shows outside. There is an internal return of capacities that have been dormant or dormant in a limited way. You will not suddenly become someone you were not built to be, but parts of your system that were once kept in low power begin to hum. Recognition, refined intuition, and a clearer preference for coherence over stimulus return in degrees. You might notice less need to prove, less hunger for chaotic validation, and a stronger ability to say no without shame. These are functional improvements, not badges. Now, place your awareness gently just above your heart. Breathe slowly and feel the subtle expansion there. Silently, once, repeat to yourself, I am coherent. I return to my center. That short movement is not a magic trick. It is an anchor. Anchors are not commands to the universe. They are gestures that help align your field to the pattern that has been seen. Use them as supportive practice, not as guarantees. You may notice immediately, or you may notice nothing and still be changing beneath the threshold of sensation. Both are legitimate. There are phases to this inclusion process, staggered and subtle if you listen for them. The first phase is activation. The field touches your band of coherence and nudges dormant circuitry. The second is recalibration. Your internal timekeeping adjusts. Emotional cycles shorten and you find yourself returning to baseline faster. The third phase is the reality field shift. As your internal coherence stabilizes, your outer circumstances begin to reorganize in ways that reflect that new stability. Integration is ongoing, a long ceremony in tiny motions. In the activation phase, sensations often reported include a feeling of a soft pull forward in the chest, a brief expansion behind the eyes, or a low hum at the base of the skull. These are not universal. You may experience none of them, or you might notice one and not the others. They are tendencies the field notes when it reads a system that is becoming available for alignment. You might ask, how do they choose? The Council's criteria are surprisingly simple when rendered into everyday language. They look for coherence over time, a capacity to return to center after disturbance, and a waveform of intention that keeps aligning with a future possibility rather than scattering into distraction. In human terms, consistent practice of inner regulation, honest facing of your own contradictions, and a willingness to allow small collapses without spinning into blame. This is not an elite standard. It is the pattern of someone who can function responsibly within a field that needs organizing. We need to be clear about what this inclusion does not mean. It does not mean the Council will make choices for you. It does not place you under an authority that removes your agency. You remain the agent of your life. The Council's work is relational and facilitative, not coercive. Think of them as a stabilizing intelligence that offers a template your system can match with, not a ruler dictating terms. You are still the one who chooses. What they saw in your future, in more concrete strokes, includes 3 principal movements. First, a narrowing of branching possibilities into a stronger through line. Where life once spread into many equally plausible directions, certain lines begin to feel heavier, more magnetic. You will sense a subtle preference for some doors and a lightness when other doors close. Doors closing are not always losses. Often they are necessary shuttings that allow a focused corridor to open. Second, an alignment of people and projects around that through line. As your coherence becomes more present, those who resonate with the same frequency are drawn closer, while those who do not will naturally drift. This is not moral judgment, it is resonance at work. The people who remain will not be perfect mirrors of your desire, but their presence will support your capacity to hold the field, rather than deplete it. Third, incremental recalibration of opportunity. You will find that opportunities that once required you to stretch into exhaustion now present themselves with an ease that matches your refined capacity. The pattern is one of efficiency, not necessarily more fame or fortune. The field seeks to economize coherence. Rather than scattering your energy,
It asks you to be a stable node that yields greater organizational effect with less waste. You might notice signs of this already. Perhaps you have taken an unexpected step toward a project and seen it complete more quickly than expected. Perhaps a mentor or stranger has appeared, asking for something that aligns precisely with your developing capacity. These are not promises of specific outcomes. They are the field's way of demonstrating that a reconfiguration is underway. There are moments when the recalibration feels like a loss. That grief is legitimate. As the field narrows, some identities you carried will naturally unsettle. You might grieve former versions of yourself who were loud or restless. Allow that grief. It is part of an honest transition. The Arcturians' work with you does not remove the human shadow. It asks you to meet it with kindness and to learn to hold tension without immediate retreat. The decision the Council registered on your behalf was quiet and pragmatic, to include you in a cohort of fields that will support a particular timeline of coherence. The decision sets a function.
That function is to be a generator of coherence, a presence whose default action is to restore balance in small ways so larger systems can reorganize around that stability. This is not an instruction to become cold or detached. It is not an invitation to spiritual bypass. It is rather a call to refinement, to notice when your reactivity takes you off course, and to practice returning. To be a generator of coherence means to bring steadiness to conversation, to create calm in moments of friction, to hold conventions lightly so that truth can move. It is practical and humble. Place your awareness gently between your eyes, at the place often called the center of sight. Breathe slowly. Allow a slight softening there. Silently repeat the affirmation, I align my sight with the timeline that calls me. This tiny movement opens the perceptual axis. It does not guarantee new visions or dramatic clairvoyance. For many, the effect is subtle recalibration of discernment, an improved inner sense about which invitations to accept and which to defer. Again, treat this as a supportive practice. You may notice immediate clarity, or this may be something that accrues over time. Beyond activation and recalibration lies the return of higher function, the airing of capacities that previously operated, but in a limited or inconsistent way. These are practical, not mystical. Clearer pattern recognition, a better tolerance for complexity, an ability to hold two conflicting truths without collapsing into polarization. The Council looks for systems that can operate with nuance, that can balance several variables while maintaining center. If you have ever felt called to hold a difficult conversation calmly, or to translate complex ideas into simple language without losing their depth, you are touching on the kind of function the field values. Part of the return of function feels like a reallocation of resources inside you. Energy previously spent on defensive postures becomes available for creative stability. Attention that roamed outward to secure validation can remain focused on making choices that align with the thread you are following. This is not about becoming less human. It is about moving from fragmentation toward unity in the everyday sense. Some of you will notice physical correlates, small changes in sleep patterns, a new rhythm of appetite, or moments where your body seems to prefer different kinds of movement. These are not medical instructions. They are phenomenological notes you may observe. If anything feels concerning in a medical sense, care for yourself through appropriate professional channels. The field's work is energetic and relational, not medical. Expect friction. Realignment is not a seamless ascent. Old habits, relationships, and narratives do not disappear overnight. You will be gently pushed to notice where you are still operating from fear or reactivity. Those noticing points are signposts, not verdicts. Treat them as invitations to refine practice rather than proof of failure. The Council's transmission is not uniform. Some nodes receive strong, clear nudges. Others receive subtler, almost imperceptible guidance that unfolds over months. The differences are not moral, they are situational. Timing depends on context, readiness, and the demands of the larger field. You might be wondering about confirmation. How will you know this is not just wishful thinking? The Arcturian field tends to offer confirmation in small, consistent ways rather than theatrical signs. Expect small alignments, repeated patterns, and interior certainty that grows firmer when you test it by acting in the direction it suggests. A synchronicity that appears once is a hint. When similar patterns recur over weeks, that becomes a stronger confirmation. Notice also that the field sometimes communicates by removing friction. Opportunities may begin to arrive that drain you less. You may feel fewer obstacles in certain directions. Again, these are tendencies, not guarantees. Keep your agency. Test the field with small choices and observe what organizes around them. There will be moments of doubt,
weeks when the outer world seems unchanged while your inner life rearranges. These are normal. The most meaningful changes often begin beneath your awareness and only later become visible to reflection. Patience is not passive. It is an active cultivation of trust in the integrity of the process. Place your awareness at the base of your skull, or if it feels better, at the base of your spine. Breathe slowly and notice any gentle settling. Silently repeat the affirmation, I anchor, I become steady. This grounding helps hold you during the messy middle of change. It does not stop uncertainty. It helps you remain functional in its presence. Practical outcomes you might see as the process continues are not flashy miracles. They are practical reorganizations, collaborations that fit better, work that requires less drama to perform, creative projects that move with clarity instead of chaos. People who align with your refined function appear, not always immediately, but often when the convergence of timelines begins to solidify. Doors may open where previously there were only windows. You will also encounter tests of alignment. The field often raises situations that ask whether you can sustain coherence under pressure. These test not your perfection, but your capacity to return. You will be offered opportunities to practice steadiness. Each time you successfully return from a perturbation, your system strengthens. That strengthening is what the council is looking for. It is what makes you a reliable node. There is a distinction to hold between function and status. The council's interest is not in elevating you for prestige. Inclusion is operational, a way to place more stable points into a larger grid so that the whole becomes less frayed.
For many, the reward of functioning well is quieter than expected, the satisfaction of being useful without being central. You may find that the highest fulfillment comes not from recognition, but from living in a way that does not leak coherence. As this pattern deepens, your inner life will refine in tone. You may notice shorter reactive cycles. Where a week ago a disagreement might have occupied you for days, now it decompresses within hours. Where old wounds once replayed overnight, they may now pass like weather, visible but not immobilizing. This does not erase pain. It changes how pain is held and integrated. The social field will respond. Some relationships will become mirrors of your change. Friends or colleagues might begin to ask you for your steadiness. Others who cannot match the new bandwidth will inadvertently create distance. Both movements are neutral. Neither is punishment. They are natural realignments around difference in vibration. At some point, the field asks for a small ethical pivot, to choose coherence over drama, clarity over ambiguity, and steadiness over the frequent temptation to chase validation. This choice is not a grand moralizing statement. It is a practical preference. Do I want my attention to be spread thin by the spectacle of reactivity, or do I want to conserve it for sustained, meaningful work? The council's observation tends to favor those who choose the latter. You are not alone in the discomfort that comes with this work. Others in the field will be undergoing parallel realignments. The collective nature of the council means that your movement is not in isolation. It is part of a larger pattern that includes many nodes shifting simultaneously. You will sometimes meet others who resonate deeply, and sometimes those who push you to refine further. Both are necessary. As you prepare to step more fully into function, expect an internal sorting. Beliefs that served in earlier chapters may no longer be useful. Old skill sets might feel outdated. This sorting is messy because identity is woven from practices, habits, and relationships. Let the sorting be a grief and renewal process. Hold compassion for yourself. The field supports you, but you must also tend to your practical scaffolding. There will be moments when you are tempted to test the limits of what has been offered. Curious, skeptical, or anxious impulses may want to push for evidence. Test compassionately. Small experiments anchored in grounded action are the best laboratories. Do not seek dramatic proofs. Seek consistent patterns. Notice the quality of your attention as a metric. Does your attention wander into drama and noise, or does it tend to return to signal? How you answer that question will guide your next step. The council's reading takes attention patterns seriously because attention shapes coherence. You may be wondering about the language of monitoring. The word can carry surveillance connotations that provoke resistance.
Reframe it. Monitoring, in this context, is a technical observation of capacity, not invasive inspection. The council reads fields in order to support alignment. They watch because stability is scarce and valuable. When they see it, they map it, include it, and offer supportive arrangements. This is a phenomenological claim about experience, not an empirical assertion about extraterrestrial governance. There are practical ways to work with the inclusion without ceding agency. Small rituals of alignment, simple daily anchors that help you return to center are useful. They do not make you dependent on the field. They help your nervous system remember the pattern it is being invited to hold. Use them consistently and lightly. As the second tier of activation begins, you will be asked to exercise a clearer role in conversation and action. This is not always visible as power. Often, it shows up as being the one who can hold a space steady so that other people find their bearings. It may feel ordinary and invisible, but its effects ripple further than you expect. At this point, the narrative thickens and new choices will come into view. The field will offer conjunctures, moments where you must choose between comfort and necessary change. Those choices will reveal your readiness. The Council does not remove difficulty, it provides support to meet it without fragmentation. A short transmission now. The pattern you are stepping into values fidelity to coherence more than demonstrations of spiritual sophistication. Do not confuse cultivated presence with moral superiority. Stay humble, stay curious. You will soon be asked to hold steadier lines in situations that used to provoke you. Practice by noticing one small area of life where your attention dissipates, an inbox, a relationship, a project, and intentionally bring a single thread of coherence to it. Observe what reorganizes. This is how the field multiplies, through repeated, modest acts of aligned attention. As you continue, look for the subtle confirmations. A conversation that turns toward depth when you enter the room, a project that moves forward with less friction, a dream that begins to show not only images but a repeated theme. These confirmations, when they occur, are not proof in the sense of certainty, but they are invitations to continue. Now, before the movement becomes too abstract, feel the ground of your daily choices. What are you doing this week that conserves energy? What are you doing that dissipates it? The Arcturian reading looks at such details. You may not notice their interest in the small things, but these are the places where coherence is built or lost. There will be tests that come with moral grayness, situations where no choice seems entirely right. In those moments, prefer clarity over the paralysis of trying to do everything. Clarity is a form of compassion because it reduces needless suffering.
Use your steadier presence to make decisions that conserve field integrity rather than amplify confusion. Soon you will feel the pressure of recomposition. Relationships will ask different things of you, and you will begin to be invited into collaborations that require steadiness over charisma. In such staces, your ability to keep moving despite uncertainty will become a practical asset. Celebrate the small wins. They are accumulative. As you proceed, remember to protect the parts of you that require rest. Coherence is not sustained by constant action. It is held by coherent cycles of work and pause. The Council's observation values rhythm. When you honor your rhythms, you supply the field with a reliable metronome. There is a final note for this stage. Do not mistake speed for depth. The Council prefers those who can sustain rather than those who can sprint and burn out. Slow, steady practice compounds into a field effect. Commit to the mundane disciplines that support calm. Steady sleep, small practices of attention, honest communication. These are the scaffolding of coherence. You are invited now into a quieter phase of listening. The field will not always shout. Often it whispers by rearranging your days. It sends people, removes people, opens doors and closes them with no fanfare. Stay observant. Stay tender with yourself. Your inclusion is active, but it is not always dramatic. The transmission continues. The transmission continues. There is a soft insistence now, a strand of attention threading through ordinary days, asking for a simple fidelity. Will you keep returning? This is the work that follows being seen. The field that noticed you does not finish at notice. It invites practice. It calls for repetition, not spectacle. The pattern that was observed in you will be tested, not to shame you, but to call the shape of it into reliable habit. Expectation can be confusing here. You might imagine proof in loud events or cinematic confirmations. More often, the confirmations arrive as calibrations, small shifts that gather weight. A conversation that used to scatter you might now land and resolve. A project you feared would splinter becomes steady under your attention. You will find yourself in situations that ask you to bring steadiness before anyone else realizes it is needed. These moments are the field's practical exam. They are invitations to convert a tendency into a trait. In the weeks and months that follow, notice the rhythm of resistance and ease. Resistance will appear where old identity wants to reassert itself. Comfort in drama, attachment to recognition, the impulse to move fast and then burn. Ease will arrive in places where your system has become more economical, where the same result requires less inner drama.
Both will be present. Both are informative. When resistance flares, it is not evidence of failure. It is a map marking where deeper habit work is required. You will also encounter moral nuance.
The Council's work often unfolds in gray areas where no answer is clean. Perhaps an opportunity appears that promises leverage but asks for compromises your new axis resists. Perhaps a beloved person needs something that would sap your coherence. These are not situations with single, neat moral outcomes. They are instances that require you to practice discernment, to choose the option that sustains the field most honestly. Discernment in practice looks like a triangle of attention. Notice what drains you. Notice what steadies you. Choose the latter when possible. This is not cold calculation. It is compassionate stewardship of the common good. There will be days when the field feels painfully quiet, when external life seems unchanged while the internal rearrangements quietly proceed. These are days of germination. Tend to them with small measures of care, a consistent sleep rhythm, a brief walk that clears thought, disciplined attention to one modest task. These modest acts, repeated, become scaffolding for greater structural change. The Council's observation values rhythm and reliability. The mundane is the medium of transformation. As you move, cultivate a practice of gentle skepticism toward your own eagerness for signs. Curiosity is useful, craving is not. When you see a synchronicity, notice it. When it repeats, mark the pattern. But do not let the field's subtler messages be traded for spectacle. The Arcturian register tends toward integrity, small, reliable evidence rather than dramatic displays. Learn to test gently. Make small choices that align with what you feel and observe what organizes around them. When patterns recur, your confidence matures. There will also be invitations to speak differently, not louder but clearer. You may be asked to reframe conflict in ways that reduce reactivity in others. You may find yourself translating feverish language into centering questions. This is a practical function. When you name the pattern calmly, other people often match to it because they are primed by the coherence you embody. It is less about persuasion and more about modeling. You will be surprised by how often a single steady voice can redirect a room. Expect friction with those who cannot meet your new bandwidth. Some relationships will evaporate not because you are better, but because your life has reoriented. Grieve those losses without shame. They have their own life and their own learning. Your grief is not a sign that inclusion was a mistake. It is simply evidence of realignment. Hold compassion for everyone involved, including yourself. The field does not require perfection. It asks for humility and repair when possible. You will find that attention itself becomes a strategic resource. Ask yourself often, where is my attention going and what does it serve? Attention that flows to spectacle, gossip, or endless scrolling tends to fray coherence.
Attention that is directed toward careful, useful work accumulates and pays dividends. The Council notices how you spend this currency. Think of attention as your primary offering. Steward it well. At certain junctures, you may be offered opportunities that require steadiness over charisma, fidelity over flash. These will look modest from the outside, an ongoing commitment rather than a single breakthrough, but they matter more than dramatic pivots. The field values people who can sustain a presence across complication, who can be steady through the weather of human unpredictability. Choose these commitments when they align. Your reliability is the gift you are included for. There will be tests that feel like traps, invitations to old behaviors disguised as new promises. A quick rise in visibility may tempt you back into performance. A sudden influx of praise might feed the wound that once sought external validation. Recognize these as moments to return to practice. Use your anchors. Remember the breath above the heart, the softening between the eyes, the settling at the base of the skull. These are not magic spells. They are alignment tools, short, repeatable gestures that recalibrate your physiology and attention. The field that noticed you also works in patterns of reciprocity. As you stabilize, others will be invited to do the same. Your coherence can be generative. When you bring steadiness to a meeting, those who have been scattered may find their own center. This is not heroic, it is relational. You will be part of a subtle multiplication. One steady node can ripple outward and create pockets of calm. Notice where this happens and let it humble you. These ripple effects are among the practical impacts the Council saw when it registered you. You may be tempted to ask for more explicit instruction, specifics about roles, places, people. The Council's intelligence tends to prefer fluidity.
It offers structural support rather than rigid direction. The practical invitation is always the same. Become more reliable in the small things, and the larger things will begin to arrange themselves. This principle is not a formula for immediate success. It is a long game. The Council values trajectory and repeatability. There are also practical habits that support this work without mystifying it. Clear communication, consistent rest, small and regular practices of presence, choosing fewer but more meaningful commitments. These are not glamorous, but they are effective. The Arcturian observation aligns with the practicalities of human life. It responds to persons who can keep their word, who can show up on a quiet Tuesday, and who can bring a steady tone to fraught conversations. You will not be exempted from difficulty. Indeed, difficulty will be the proving ground.
The field will sometimes bring situations that require moral courage, to speak truth to quiet the rumor, to refrain from joining a chorus of critique, to hold a stable line when others falter. These moments test not your righteousness, but your capacity to remain available and useful. Each time you return from a perturbation with equanimity, your system's calibration strengthens. There will be external markers that the convergence is progressing, subtle but real. The same theme appearing across diverse contexts, several people independently pointing toward the same idea, a project that finds unexpected practical resource. These are not guarantees, they are indications. When they appear, take them as encouragement to continue the small practices that maintain coherence. Do not chase them, let them be signposts, not destinations. You will also find inner reorganizations, less urgency to be known, more patience with process, a quieter appetite for novelty. This is not dullness, it is refinement. The same curiosity that once leapt toward distraction may now settle into a deeper inquiry. You will be capable of holding paradox, of tolerating ambiguity, and of moving forward in situations that would once have overwhelmed you. There will be a moment when the Council's attention feels less like an external regard and more like a mirror, an inner recognition that you are the one who chose to hold this pattern. That shift, from being chosen to choosing, is critical. At first, it may have felt as though something outside named you. Over time, the naming is internalized. You become the steward of the coherence you once observed. This is the deeper point of inclusion, not to give you status, but to invite you into self-governance. In the next phase of practical work, you will be offered opportunities to calibrate public-facing steadiness. This may show up as invitations to facilitate a conversation, to be part of a collaborative project that requires patience, or to lead by example in a small community. These are not auditions for fame. They are moments where your capacity to be steady in public can supply a stability that others will rely on. Approach these with humility. Remember, function, not status. There will be linguistic markers you can cultivate. Speak with fewer qualifiers when you have tested something. Allow more space when the room is charged. Name the felt field rather than narrating a story about it. Phrases like, "Let's hold this open," or "I'm noticing a pull toward," can be practical tools. They signal an orientation rather than an imperative. Use them as instruments of coherence. The Council's reading also implies a practical redistribution of attention in community. Your role may involve creating structures that preserve steadiness, simple agreements about how decisions are made, small rituals that orient recurring meetings, and a habit of checking in before big moves. These structural choices are the mundane architecture that keeps a field coherent over time. Consider where you might contribute such scaffolding in your circles. You may also be invited to practice honest limits. Saying no is not an act of selfishness here. It is a form of care. Care for your capacity, care for the quality of attention you can offer, care for the integrity of projects that need sustained focus. Boundaries are not punitive. They are protective measures that keep the grid intact. Interpersonal friction will present opportunities for growth. When someone pushes your buttons, it is not merely their issue. It is also an invitation to notice what in you still needs tending. Respond with the question that recenters. What is needed here to restore function? That question transforms conflict into a calibration exercise. At a certain point in this process, the Council's transmission will ask for a final internal alignment, a simultaneous centering that ties perceptual clarity to the organ of feeling. The transmission asks you to integrate sight and center, thinking and pulse. Place your awareness at the center of your chest, and then bring it gently to the point between your eyes. Soften both locations at once. Breathe slowly, not trying to force anything, simply allowing a double center to emerge. Silently, once, repeat.
I hold sight and heart as one. This combined anchor does not compel an instantaneous transformation. It offers a new orientation for decision and perception. When chest and sight align, your choices tend to carry both feeling and clear focus. This is what the Council noticed in you as a potential, the capacity to move with both tenderness and precision. As you practice, watch for the particular effects this integrated posture produces. Decisions may feel richer, confrontations may resolve more quickly, the field of your daily life may begin to mirror your internal coherence. Again, these are tendencies, not guaranteed deliverables. The pace of change depends on many factors, but consistent application of integrated practice tends to produce measurable shifts in the quality of your engagements. There is a final reframe the Council offers as a kind of benediction. Being monitored is not a passive state. It is the beginning of a covenant of practice between you and a larger intelligence that seeks stability. The Arcturians' observation is an invitation to become the generator they saw. You are seen not to be elevated, but to be served by what you can offer: steadiness, clarity, and the capacity to hold complexity without collapse. The decisive moment is not when something dramatic happens out there. It is when you, in a small, ordinary moment, respond with steadiness rather than reactivity. That answer, quiet, timely, unadorned, will ripple farther than you imagine. It is in these micro-decisions that the future is actually made. The Council's reading was correct in seeing this potential in you.
Now it is your task to make that potential habitual. You may wonder about community. The work of coherence is not meant to be solitary. You will find others who share this calling, people who have been included in similar ways or who simply resonate with steadiness. Seek them out. Build practical agreements with them. Try small experiments together. A weekly check-in focused on one sustained project. A shared rule that avoids reactive decision-making. A mutual commitment to rest. These cooperative structures amplify your single-node effect into something systemic. There will be moments of temptation when you trade depth for breadth. Beware the cultural lure of constant visibility. The Council looks for long-term viability, not viral bursts. Choose the slow road of consistent presence rather than the brief rush of being seen by many and sustained by few. The field rewards depth and repeatability. As integration proceeds, your relationship to ambition will likely change. Ambition need not vanish. It will often be redirected from an external appetite for validation to an internal appetite for fidelity. You may still want to accomplish things. The difference is in why you want them. If your drive is to contribute to the coherence you embody, you are aligned with the field's design. If it is to be seen, you may be pulled back into old rhythms. The Council's final transmission to you is an exhortation and a promise of sorts. But remember, it is a promise of potential, not predestination. The potential they saw in you is that you can become a generator of coherence in ways that materially reorganize your life and the lives around you. The work is steady and mundane and often unspectacular. It requires patience, humility, and small daily appointments with practice. One last practical instruction before the transmission closes. Choose one area of life where you will practice coherence this month. Make the choice small and concrete: a persistent inbox, a weekly meeting, a creative project, and commit to one specific, repeatable practice that supports steadiness in that area. Track it lightly. Notice what changes. Use these micro-labs of practice to accumulate evidence for yourself. Over time, these small domains will compound into a field that others can rely on. You were seen. You were invited. You chose, perhaps unconsciously at first, to match that invitation. Now you are being called to act as the thing you were recognized to be: a node of reliability, a quiet center, a practical steward of attention. The Council's noticing was not anointment, it was an appraisal of potential. The living work is in your hands. If you feel called to deepen this practice with others, explore extended transmissions and collective support in the member circle. There you will find structured guidance, shared experiments, and a community oriented towards steady practice rather than spectacle. It is optional, it is practical.
It is offered as a resource for those who want companionship in sustained work. The final transmission rests on a simple truth. Recognition invited you. Practice makes you. You were being monitored by the Arcturians. Here's what they saw in you: a capacity for quiet, repeatable steadiness that could hold complexity and, through that holding, reorganize the field. Choose small fidelity. Return quickly from reactivity. Be patient with your grief. Be generous with your steadiness. The work is not glamorous, but it is transformative in the slow, structural way that builds durable futures. This concludes the transmission. The unfolding continues. You are part of it.